All right. How's everybody doing? Yeah, okay, there we go. I know it's been a long day, but we have a really awesome session for you right now. This is part of the Scaling Atlassian track, and they have so much great content they're going to get into, so I'm not going to waste much more of your time. But this is the top 5 skills enterprise admins need to know, and we have Isha Mehta from Atlassian and Alex Gallien from Airbnb. So give them a round of applause and enjoy the session. Thanks.
Awesome. Thank you, Brian. Can everyone hear me okay? Oh, great. So much excitement. I'm Isha. This is Alex, and we're here to tell you about the top 5 skills that enterprise admins need to know. First of all, thank you so much for coming to our talk. I know it's getting later to the evening, and we're getting closer to drinks, but thank you so much for being here. This talk came about from a lot of conversations with admins like yourselves. And a lot of those conversations were at user groups, at Summit, or during customer interviews. And time again, I was asked about how to manage an instance at scale. Questions like, how do I best scale my Jira instance for the next 2 years? Should I be investing in tools for monitoring? Do I need a dedicated team? How are other companies at scale doing this? And after speaking to a lot of other admins, including Alex, we realized that there is a common theme and a common set of skills that most of the enterprise admins that we spoke to have. So today we'd love to take you through 5 of those big common themes, and let's get started.
So today we'll start by setting some context, running through the 5 skills that we're going to go through, and then have a little time afterwards for questions, hopefully. Before we jump in, wanted to introduce ourselves. So I'm Alex Gallien. I'm the senior Atlassian engineer at Airbnb, otherwise known as the Jira guy. I'm a yoga and meditation teacher, a snake dad, and I'm also a fire dancer. And you will see me at Summit with not fire, but lights.
Like I said before, I'm Isha. I'm a product manager working on the server mobile team at Atlassian. Some fun facts to know about me. I'm a cake enthusiast. I am a self-professed cake enthusiast. One cake that I really want to try here in Las Vegas is the 24-layer cake at Planet Hollywood. So if anyone's actually tried that, please tell me about it after. And the second thing is I'm an Instagram influencer, a foodie Instagram influencer. And for anyone who doesn't know what that is, influencers actually share their experiences on social media to affect purchase decisions of other people. And what that means for me is I go out and eat at a lot of different restaurants and pool spots and share that with my audience. So who here is an admin? Be proud. Oh, great, that's a lot of you. Awesome. So you all know that being an admin is hard. And a lot of admins describe it a little something like this. From figuring out workflows in Jira to navigating Confluence's permissions and managing user and business expectations, it's not an easy feat. Now, when you think about being an enterprise admin, this feeling of fine multiplies by a lot, and it becomes much harder. Not just because of the number of users, but because of instance complexity. For the purpose of this talk, we've defined an enterprise as any organization that has 1,000 users and is continually growing. When you think about the differences between an admin and an admin at scale, an admin might just be managing one instance.
But an admin at scale is probably managing multiple instances.
An admin is across 1 or 2 teams within an organization.
An admin at scale is across multiple teams across their organization.
An admin at scale is probably co-located with their team in one location.
Whereas an admin at scale probably has multiple locations around the world.
And finally, an admin is in an organization that have Atlassian products used by specific teams.
For an admin at scale, Atlassian products are often mission critical, and if they go down, people have to stop working. Now that we've set some context, let's jump straight into the skills, the hot tips that will help make your lives and the lives of your users easier.
So, often when organizations adopt Atlassian tools, it starts with a team, usually with the caveat that they have to manage it themselves. Then another team comes along wanting to use Jira or Confluence, or both, in their own unique ways. Then another, and another, And before you know it, you've got multiple teams running their own Jira or their own Confluence all around the world. But as you're scaling your organization, this will inevitably lead to disconnect between how different areas of the organization operate, and not to mention major operating challenges around reporting and lack of common working practices or proper controls. Such decentralization will also result in multiple backup solutions, or sometimes none, multiple infrastructure provisions, unnecessary overheads, and a plethora of versions with no standard methodologies across teams. Which brings us to our first skill. The first skill is all around governance. The 4 areas of governance that we'll focus on are centralization, access, empowering users, and balancing flexibility and consistency. Let's dig deeper into centralization. First things first, a centralized and consolidated setup means that you can put the necessary controls in place. The earlier, the better. And it allows you to enforce some process standardization for reporting and management purposes, while still allowing teams to work in their preferred ways. There are 2 ways you can do this. You can either scale your single instance, or you can adopt data center. The main distinction here is that server runs on a single node, whereas data center allows you to run on multiple nodes. Second, centralize your team. This means establishing one team that is responsible for the administration of Atlassian products across the entire organization.
Here's an example of Airbnb's current admin team structure across our Atlassian products. Our team is called Content Collaboration. As you can see on the right side, we've got the more Jira-focused things. We've got a bunch of developers rolling up to me, rolling up to our engineering manager. And on the content side, we've got our technical writers that roll up to a knowledge manager who rolls up to our service delivery manager. But the middle bits are the really important ones, like having a good project manager to keep you organized and make sure that your team's accomplishing the things you're promising to accomplish is crucial. Business analysts, even more so. They take the requirements from your customers, they translate it into what you need to do, and they let you focus on doing the engineering tasks that are actually fun and interesting instead of going back and forth and doing nitpicky requirement gathering. Highly recommend you get a BA.
And finally, centralize your processes. Make sure that there are processes set in place across the Atlassian product suite for your entire organization and all your users. A process is a series of actions or steps taken in order to achieve a specific or particular end. For some organizations, they might have we do things a specific way. But in enterprise organizations, there's probably multiple ways of doing the same thing. When establishing processes, remember that one size doesn't fit all. But there are recurring themes here. Are there certain things that all teams do? Aim for simplicity over scale, and establish processes for common recurring themes in order to ensure that you don't over-optimize for those specific edge cases. Moving on to the second point, limiting access. The first thing to do here is understand access levels. So, Jira sysadmins can perform all admin functions within Jira, while people who only have Jira admin permissions cannot perform functions that could potentially affect the application environment or the network. This separation is useful for organizations which need to delegate some of the admin privileges, such as creating users or creating projects, to particular people without actually granting them complete rights to administer the whole entire Jira. And finally, project permissions apply to a particular project. Second, make sure you give the right access to the right people. Not everyone needs to be a sysadmin.
At Airbnb, we've established a power users group, mostly within the IT and support organizations that also have the lower level of admin access so they can do like creating projects sometimes and modifying some of the lower level stuff without being able to touch creating new custom fields or creating, adding and removing add-ons.
And finally, make sure you do a regular audit of all the permissions that you give your users. Ask yourself or ask them on a regular basis, do they still need access for this permission to get their work done? And if the answer is no, then remove the access. The third part of governance is all about empowering users. In order to empower users, make sure you establish a knowledge base. Within Atlassian, we use Confluence as a single source of truth for all of the user questions.
At Airbnb, we also use Confluence for our knowledge base. And here's an example of what the front page for the knowledge base on our team looks like.
Second, outline the intended use of the Atlassian products. If you're not supposed to use Jira as a document sharing tool within your organization, make sure you outline that. Atlassian tools are known for their flexibility, which means you can use them to solve many problems in many different ways. Make sure you let your users know how you're using them within your organizations to avoid any confusion and maintain that consistency.
We have ours broken down by products and by process. So you can see the products that we offer. This is all the things that our team, well, most of the things that our team supports. And then we also have process. So knowledge management, technical writing, and task management are kind of the bigger themes where we can give people advice on how to do that and how to manage their day-to-day work in the Atlassian products. So here's some examples of articles, like using the Jira issues macro, how to create a system banner. So we have some for our admins, and we have some for our end users as well.
And finally, create an open channel of communication. Users aren't always going to find the answers in the documentation, and they'll sometimes need a personal touch from an admin or your team for a specific problem that they're facing. Make sure you have a dedicated channel through which they are able to access you.
At Airbnb, we've leveraged Slack for this. We've got specific rooms for the different products where people can ask questions. We've got Joe, who's sitting in the front row here, helping someone out. As well as you can see in the bottom example, something that would have taken up to a week because we were mid-sprint got done in 15 minutes. So that's going to leave your users happier and make it a lot easier to restrict that admin permission by taking care of their day-to-day requests a lot faster.
And ultimately, balance flexibility and consistency. Atlassian products at scale require governance. While it's easy for departments to define their own rules, you need to ensure that you provide a unified, well-running, well-coordinated organization-wide system in order to maintain that consistency and scale in the future. However, you want to ensure that you don't over-optimize for consistency without thinking about flexibility. Standardize where it's important, and allow for flexibility where possible to allow to quickly pivot in the future based on the growth and based on your business and your users.
So how many people have heard this before? Pretty much everyone, right? So there's a lot of aspects to performance. We're going to walk through 4 major points to help understand this better, and then end with some quick Jira-related performance wins that you can just do right away to improve the speed of your instance. So first up, it's important to understand what truly impacts performance. One of the most common metrics of how big you are is how many issues you have in Jira. But this isn't always a good indicator of how your Jira instance is going to perform. With good governance and a good admin team, this stops being as big of a problem. The reason why performance issues are so difficult to be solved is because the number of factors involved. The usage of your instance, the way it's configured, customizations, the hardware, there's a lot of elements that you have to focus on. So it's helpful to hone in on a few and focus there and then move on to others later. And because of that, there's really no one-size-fits-all solution. Understanding what makes your environment unique and custom is really important in understanding how to improve the performance of your instance.
Once you have a good understanding of the factors that impact performance, you need to learn your limits. There are 3 limits that you need to be aware of. First of all, hardware limits. Your servers need to be correctly sized for your usage level. We actually have a supported platform page that we actually use online that you can use to guide your own instances. Next, understand your usage limits, especially when it comes to integrations. This will be especially important when diagnosing performance problems, because in some cases, there might be that one metric that's defining your overall size profile. And eventually, this bloated metric affects performance. But once you've identified it, you can find ways to manage it. Finally, Jira is flexible and can be customized for your needs. You should be aware of these configurations and customizations to ensure that your environment can actually handle it.
Understanding what a user really means when they say Jira is slow is just as important as doing general performance improvements. Oftentimes you'll find that it's not really a problem with Jira, but a problem with the way that it's being used or customizations or just the process that the user is trying to implement. So people use Atlassian software for a variety of diverse use cases. Understanding those use cases and like what your users' goals and what they need to be successful and what they're using the product for is really crucial for understanding how to give them the best experience. Oftentimes as admins, we're forced to say no or to make changes that they disagree with, such as locking down administrator permissions, which if anyone's done that, people don't like it. Having a good explanation of why prepared, or in the case of performance issues, linking to a bug, or having some sort of data that backs up your claims is really important for getting the message across in a pleasant way. So quick performance wins. All right, this is what people want to hear, right? Many times the problem is that,
Whoops.
Okay, custom field context. So this is a really bad habit I see many admins falling into, where we create tons of custom fields and we never set the context. And so every single time that you're pulling an issue, you're pulling all this extra data that you really don't need. So this will affect your searches, your agile boards, dashboards, plugins that rely on searches, pretty much everything. So when you create a new custom field, always set a context. Unless it's in more than 20 projects, then don't. But that's about the limit.
But Alex, we already have 1,500 custom fields. What should we do about that now? Should we hire an intern?
Hiring interns is one way to do it. I considered it, but turns out there's a really great plugin, previously called Cleaner for Jira. I just learned that it's now Optimizer for Jira, and it can set custom field context for you automatically, as well as clean up all of the extra schemes, workflows, and all that extra stuff that I know everyone here has sitting around at their instance unused right now. Atlassian's also coming out with a custom field context setter in 7.13. So if you don't want to shell out the money for Cleaner and you're not interested in those other features, there's actually going to be a built-in option as well, and highly recommend that you check that out. So for a little example of why, here's the before and after on searching for an epic link. So you can see the one on the left populates, is the GIF running? In about 1 second, whereas the one on the right takes about, all right, other way around, left, takes about 14 seconds, and the one on the right takes 1 second. So this was after running Cleaner and setting some manual context, and then running a full reindex on our instance. So really significant difference. Definitely recommend that everyone starts exploring this, especially if you're over a couple hundred custom fields. So finally, one really easy win that's often overlooked is disabling the empty JQL search. So when you go to search for issues, search for issues, if you don't have this disabled, it searches your entire Lucene index for every single issue and pulls it and gives you this big, totally useless search. This takes forever when you have a lot of issues. So in 7.9, yeah, 7.9, they introduced a feature that allows you to just return a blank search when you go there. But if you've upgraded from a version from before 7.9, which most of you probably have, it's not on by default. So this is under general configuration. You can see the big arrow there. Highly recommend you turn this on. There's really no reason you need the empty JQL search. So yeah, those are the easy performance wins. You can get a lot deeper with it, but these are some things that you can just do right away that have an immediate impact in performance and in perceived performance.
Now on to our next skill, monitoring. Monitoring is a vital part of ensuring the integrity and continued optimization of your instance. Regularly monitoring your application means that you prepare for usage growth and reconfiguration in the future. What you want to do here is focus on building enough data to identify trends. This will be more informative than studying performance snapshot when deciding how best to optimize your application over time. So we're going to go through what to monitor, how to establish a monitoring strategy, thinking about non-alerted metrics, and finally thinking about external monitoring tools. First, you need to know what to monitor. Know that there are two types of metrics that you could be measuring: usage and infrastructure. Within usage, there are metrics such as number of issues, number of custom fields, activity of major integrations. But on the other side, with infrastructure, there are things like CPU, disk space, JVM, JMX statistics, and database performance. Second, establish alert levels. Not all metrics have the same level of importance, and you want to make sure you have the right metric alert level for the right metric.
So at Airbnb, we separate between alerts that happen in the Slack channel and alerts that we get paged for. So for the Slack channel, if we notice that mail hasn't get processed for a certain amount of time, because that was an issue we had for a while, if there's an issue with the staging or dev node, or if there's like some early warnings on an infrastructure stats. Pager, Jira is down, we get a page, of course. Critical CPU and disk consumption, or manual incidents when somebody notices something and triggers it. We'll get pages for those.
And once you've set these alert levels, you need to outline alert actions. What will you do once this alert is triggered? It's all well and good to have an alert set in place, but if you don't know what you're going to actually do with it, nothing's really going to end up happening. Next, you need to establish a monitoring strategy. This involves key performance indicators to show you that your instance is performing at an optimal level. You need to identify these for your instance to ensure that it's actually operating at a healthy level. After you've identified these KPIs, ensure that you set realistic targets. It's unrealistic to assume that your user performance will always be at a high. If you don't have a baseline, it's really great to set a target, but know that it takes time to understand your instance before you land on the right metric for your instance. And lastly, establish service level agreements, or SLAs. They help you react in a timely fashion to the alerts that you've set in order to ensure that you're actually handling these requests in the most appropriate ways. Without SLAs, you won't be able to set a deadline for a request, and that can be dangerous, especially if Jira is down. Now, we all know not all metrics are the same, and in the same way, they sometimes don't always need to have alerts, but you do need to keep an eye on them. The first thing you should look out for is the number of users and fields in Jira. The rate at which this is growing will help you plan for growth for your instance and your business in the future. Second, think about active HTTP threads. This is an easy metric to show you how actively used the product is. And as we know, Jira is chatty, so it's always great to keep an eye on the mail that you get from Jira.
We had an issue one time where somebody had accidentally added a group that had every engineer, data scientist, and everybody on IT to get every issue updated event from our biggest and most active project. By the time we caught this, we had about 280,000 emails in our mail relays. Fortunately, we have external mail relays. We were able to get rid of it, but it seems like something that wouldn't be that useful to monitor, but turns out it's very useful. So another story. This is a logic monitor for us, and in the bottom right here, you see that kind of weird shape in our memory graph. We had been receiving alerts that Confluence had restarted, and we couldn't figure out why. And when I looked at there, I saw that pattern. I was like, OK, Confluence is definitely being restarted. And what we'd realized was before we got a critical threshold saying that Confluence was down, we have Chef managing everything on the back end. So Chef was bringing the process back up. So we were getting hit by the dreaded Linux out-of-memory killer. And it took Confluence down. Chef brought it up. And it was never down for long enough to actually set off an alarm. So it's really important that you figure out what those thresholds are and what other factors can go into potentially setting off your alarms. Otherwise, you might miss Confluence dying over and over again.
And based on your instance and your needs, you may actually want to consider other tools for monitoring as well. Some of the ones that we see customers using are Java Melody to monitor the health of your JVM, New Relic for end-to-end transaction tracing, application response times, JVM analysis, and more, and Dynatrace for end-to-end tracing and monitoring. There are many, many other monitoring tools out there, and you should think about which ones you need in order to be more effective. And ultimately, your decision will be based on the expertise that you have within your company, the resources, and budget.
So So Airbnb doesn't actually use any of those products that were just mentioned. They're all great, but the main ones that we use are Sumo Logic for log parsing and aggregation, especially for data center customers. Having a log aggregator that lets you search all the logs from all your nodes is really crucial for tracking down issues. PagerDuty is what drives our alerting and monitoring, and then Logic Monitor for the infrastructure and usage metrics, which is the screenshot you saw earlier.
Awesome. Upgrading to modern versions has a lot of advantages. You get new features, new fixes, and all of the new improvements. And it also keeps your environment and tools up to date. But we know that upgrading isn't an easy task, especially at scale, which is why having an upgrade strategy is really important. You want to decide what release is right for you, plan your upgrade your instance, and lean on experts if needed. First, you need to decide what release is right for you. We've used a variety of terms in the future to define these types of releases over the years, everything from minor bug fix to platform to .o and more. There are 3 types of releases that you need to be aware of when deciding which release is right for you. First, platform releases. These contain significant or breaking changes. This might include changes or removal of existing APIs, significant changes to the user experience, or a major feature. For example, we just recently released Jira 8.0. Now, a feature release can contain new features, changes to existing features, supported platforms, or the removal of features. Within these, there are also bug fixes. And we recommend that you upgrade to the latest bug fix of the release that you're on. In addition to all 3 releases that I mentioned, we also have designated enterprise releases, which means that you'll receive bug fixes for a longer period of time than a standard feature release. We recommend that if you're only upgrading once or twice a year, that you get on an enterprise release.
If you're an admin at scale or going to be an admin at scale, you should really listen to this advice. I have not listened to this advice in the past, and it was not good. So I highly recommend you listen to Atlassian. They know what they're talking about, and stick to the enterprise releases if you are at scale at all.
Second, you want to plan your upgrade. In order to plan your upgrade, you'll first need to understand the changes in supported platforms. Like I mentioned earlier, we have a dedicated supported platforms page for each of our products to get an understanding of what these changes are. Next, make sure you run instance health checks to make sure that your instance is healthy even before you perform an upgrade. There's nothing worse than performing an upgrade and then realizing there was something wrong with your instance even beforehand and then running into downtime. You can find the instance health page in the troubleshooting and support tools within the admin section. Finally, if you're on Jira 7.4, 7.4.3 and above, you'll be able to use the pre-upgrade planning page that we just shipped on Tuesday this week in order to plan your upgrade. This is both for server and data center, and it's an in-product tool that creates a tailored upgrade plan based on your instance. It checks for information such as health checks, supported platforms, and license validity for the version that you actually want to move to. And it detects any modifications or any other products. For example, if you have Jira Service Desk with Jira, and gives you a tailored plan based on your specific instance. You can find this under the application section under Plan Your Upgrade. The only thing you'll need to do is update the Atlassian Troubleshooting Support Tools plugin to the latest version on UPM. After you've decided what release is right for you and you've planned your upgrade, it's time to actually upgrade your instance. Before you upgrade, it's always important to test your upgrade. This will help iron out any issues before you do the actual prod upgrade. A pro tip here is to document all of your learnings that you have so that you and your team can use them when you're doing the final upgrade. If you're on a data center instance, there are data center upgrade features that you can use when you're actually performing your upgrade. For Jira, there's zero downtime upgrades, which means that you can put your instance in upgrade mode, perform the upgrade with zero downtime, and hopefully it'll save you from coming in on a weekend to perform an upgrade. For Confluence, it's a little bit different. We've got read-only mode. You can use this to actually set your instance to read-only mode and back up your instance and do all of the pre-upgrade tasks that you need to so that it results in lower downtime.
So automation is also an incredibly powerful tool with upgrading. Airbnb leverages Chef and Terraform to automate our upgrade process. Terraform allows us to destroy and create AWS nodes at will based on templates really quickly. And Chef streamlines the process by asserting all of the correct files and customizations are in place. So our process now is put it in ZDU mode, shut down a node, run Chef, turn it on, rinse and repeat for all of our nodes, and we're upgraded. It makes it a lot easier. It's a big investment up front, and it's a new technology for a lot of people, but Chef, Ansible, Puppet, having one of those tools, if you're using Data Center, is essential. You will thank yourself in the long run.
And finally, lean on experts if you need to when planning or performing your upgrades. Our technical account managers help with the strategic scaling of Atlassian products and help manage for growth in the future.
I just want to give a shout out to Chuck Talk. I'm not sure if he's here or not, but he's our technical account manager. It's been really awesome. Any issue that we can't get through to support, or things that are a little kind of out of the normal context of what you'd be asking from support, he's been crucial with helping with connecting us with developers. It's been really great. So highly recommend getting a TAM.
Priority and Premier support will help you in coverage of all of your Atlassian products, and this comes in handy, especially when you're upgrading and run into any problems at all.
And if you do have Premier support and you would like help with your upgrade, make sure you let them know about a month in advance so they can plan to have somebody on call. They appreciate that, and it'll guarantee that you'll have someone if you need them when maybe something goes wrong, which it never would, of course.
And finally, there are also solution partners that can help you with solutions, training, or strategic services that you need. While all of the 4 skills that we talked about were critically important, we've come to see that the human element to scaling is just as important, and most often the most overlooked part. At Atlassian, we place a lot of value and importance on people and culture, and we believe that understanding how your teams work together and develop processes offline before mapping them to your tools will better set you up for success. We'll talk about how you can help users help themselves, change control, making it easy to find help, and finally, learning how to say no. First, you need to help users help themselves. This is all about ensuring that the Atlassian knowledge is spread out and disseminated across your entire team, not just with you. One easy way to do that is through Atlassian training and getting certified. Atlassian University provides training and certification programs that are designed to give you expertise on all of the Atlassian products. The classes are also divided up into different roles, so you can look for a Jira admin course, a Jira service desk course, or any other ones that you're looking for. Alongside paid training and online courses, you'll also find free training material at Atlassian University about the Atlassian products. We understand that not all teams will have budget to go do Atlassian training, but one way to actually share that knowledge back with your team is having maybe 1 or 2 people in your team doing the training and then sharing that knowledge back.
Airbnb leverages our Jira enthusiasts by having power user groups where we meet together and share knowledge and pro tips, which then can get disseminated to the rest of their coworkers and the rest of the company. Learning Jira plugins can be almost as hard as learning Jira itself. Structure, Portfolio, Jira Enterprise Mail Handler in particular, if anyone's used that, all require a ton of learning. So establishing engineers and users who are subject matter experts in that can make your life a lot easier in the long run.
Moving on to change control.
So the one question that I always have my engineers ask is, what problem are we trying to solve here? A lot of the times users will come to us with requirements, and they think they know exactly what they need and exactly how to do it. If you can ask yourself this question, like, what problem are we trying to solve here? You can get to the root of what you actually need to do and try and find the best solution for your users. Always test all changes in non-production environments. At Airbnb, we have a development environment. This is kind of just like the Wild West. We can do whatever we want, plugins, script runner, we don't care. Then we have stage, which is a little closer to production, and that's what we use to demo changes to users and demonstrate like non-destructive customization. And then we have production, where everything really happens. It's also essential to have a backup plan. So database backups, snapshots, there's a lot of strategies to this, but just having a backup plan is not sufficient. You have to run through your backup plan. Because if you're in an incident and you've got a corrupt database and you realize there's some problem in your backup procedure, in your restoration procedure, you're going to be in hot water. So run through your backup plan, simulate an issue, go delete a bunch of random tables and see what happens. In your dev environment, of course. So it's really important that you make it as easy as possible for your users to get a hold of you, especially when you've locked down administrator permissions. People will get frustrated by not being able to make the day-to-day changes. So like having the Slack channel that we showed you earlier is really essential. We also have a single Jira project for our entire team and leverage canned responses to give templates to people. So if you have a project creation, we say, these are all the things we need from you. Give us all this information, and then we can take care of their requests really quickly. Oh, as we saw earlier, having a dedicated communications channel, such as Slack, is really great for taking care of those day-to-day operational requests. And also just being available. At scale, it's essential to lock down, as we said earlier, to lock down the administrator permissions so people can't make these changes. But that gets really frustrating, especially for engineers who are used to being able to tinker with everything. So you need to make sure that you and your team are available, especially for those day-to-day requests that should be easy. Your user base will be a lot happier if you can knock those little easy things out faster. And finally, it's really important to say no in the right way. Atlassian develops complex, highly customizable tools that can do just about anything you want them to. But that doesn't mean that you should do just about anything with them. Understanding how customizations will affect your performance and support these points with data to, when you're telling your users no, always have data to back up your claims. Whether that's an Atlassian article or data that you've gathered on your own, always have something to support your argument, because that'll make people accept what you're telling them a lot easier.
So you're the ultimate gatekeeper of your Atlassian products. So when you're saying no, think of yourself as Gandalf. Ultimately protecting Atlassian products in your organization for the greater good and not letting everyone just pass through. So if we just run through the skills really quickly, because I know we went through a lot of content. Establish governance early on to ensure a unified, well-running, well-coordinated, organization-wide system that's consistent. Second, learn how your instance performs and set guidelines so you can plan for growth in the future. Third, monitor changes in your instance and set alerts to be aware of anything that's actually happening. Fourth, develop an upgrade strategy and plan to update regularly so you can get all of the new features, fixes, and improvements. And finally, recognize that users are only human and that being an admin at scale means that you'll sometimes have to say no for the greater good of your Atlassian products.
At Airbnb, one of our core values is be a host. And so, at Airbnb, obviously, we have many people hosting people all over the world. But it really drives everything that we do. And as admins, our job is to be a host. We're here to make everyone's lives easier and to empower people to do the best work of their lives. And if ran correctly, we can be an essential asset to any company and make everyone's lives easier. So when you're thinking about this, when you've got frustrating users coming to you with complicated problems, or complaining that Jira is slow for the 10,000th time, remember, our job is to be a host, to be loving, and to empower everyone.
Thank you.